Hello everyone, welcome to the channel. My name is Cordamt and today we are going to be discussing the character builds which I used for my first playthrough in Path of the Damned of Tyranny. In case you guys are interested, I'm gonna leave a link up here with the playlist for the playthrough in case you guys want to check it out. But we have beaten the game with my core party right here. So I know a lot of people like to see this. I think this might actually end up being a somewhat short video because there's not a lot to talk about in terms of the actual builds. It's not something like Pathfinder, for example. But still, I do know people like to see this and what I used, so let's go over this one by one. So I can start with my front line here, going by the order of what we see here. And just a note, in my playthrough, this was my core party. Okay, so if you don't know who this guy is, minor spoilers up ahead. Right, it's Barik after removing his armor. But yeah, I had Barik versus myself, Edwin Odesseron, and then Lantry for my final member. This was my core party during the entire game. I basically never really swapped my party members, and that's just because I didn't really feel like it. There was no metagaming reason, there was nothing like that, min-maxing, whatever. There was no reason like that. It's just because I liked the characters I had. I wanted to keep them with me to, you know, continue their storyline and seeing their banter and all those things. So I just kept them during the entire course of the campaign. So I never really touched Kills in Shadow, Ebb, or Siren, even though I have some idea of what they could be used for, and I'll talk about that at the end. But yeah, so the core of my party right here is we have Barik as my frontline melee tank. His main purpose is to stand in front of everybody else, draw the attention of as many enemies as possible, make them go to him, and take the attention off of my squishier targets. Because of course, he's going to have more armor values, he's going to be more resilient, he has talents that benefit him being defensive, and even his overall layout of using a sword and a shield, that's how I built him, makes him ideal for that role. Next up, we had Verse. Verse, if you want to think about her as more of a traditional style of character or class, you could think of her as a rogue. So Verse played essentially as a rogue, where for example Barik played mostly as a fighter. Okay, so her purpose was dual wield, whichever weapons were better for the job at hand. And it can be whatever, it can be daggers, it can be swords, it can be maces, depending on what you want. But her role was consistent DPS and also some disabling of the enemies. We'll go over those in more detail in a bit. Next we have my main character, Edwin Odesseron, and his role is to be an offensive spellcaster. Now, he's an offensive spellcaster, but he's not just an offensive spellcaster. He also has abilities which are going to benefit his entire party in the form of buffs, talents, skills, what have you. But his main role really is to cast devastating offensive spells to either debuff the enemy, disable the enemy, or just outright damage and kill the enemy, with a couple of support spells to help out the party. And finally, we have Lantry. Now, Lantry is a little bit split, right? Because Lantry's main role, at least for a larger portion of the game, I guess, or the earlier portion of the game, is more of a support role. Okay, so Lantry, I keep him in the party. Oh god, she scared me. Lantry, I keep him in the party because he is a nice supportive spellcaster. He comes in with some nice skills in control life and control vigor. So he's kind of built to be a buffer and a healer. But then I also built him as more of an offensive spellcaster as well. So his main role is still to support the party. He's actually the only spellcaster out of the two of us that actually has healing spells. I could have had them on my main character as well, but I prefer to focus more on damage. So he's the one with more healing spells, he's the one that has more support spells, but he still has like half his spell arsenal is still offensive. So even though he comes to the party as a support and healer, he can still be a very powerful offensive spellcaster. So yeah, that's mainly the core of my party here. A frontline tank, a frontline DPS character, and then in the backline we're gonna have our support and ranged damage dealers in the form of 2 spellcasters. Some brief mentions here. I would say that if you want to swap around the party, the easier swaps you could have, at least for the style of playthrough that I had, was swapping Verse for Kills in Shadow, because I'm thinking that she is a DPS oriented character just like Verse is. I would not swap, for example, Barik for her. I would lose a lot of stability and resilience to my party if I did that. And if you want to play with Ebb, the easier choice would have been to take out Lantry, or even myself. That would mean my main character would be something different. So she would also be a powerful spellcaster. And Sirin or Siren, she would also take the role of one of the backline characters. I think she's more of a debuffer spellcaster, but she is still a spellcaster anyway. Okay, so with that said, I think this is a pretty balanced party. Not only in terms of combat, but also in terms of dealing with skill checks, because we have somebody that's powerful in athletics, we have someone that is powerful in subterfuge, we have people very powerful in lore, and that basically covers most of what you need for the entire game. I don't think I ever had any kind of trouble with skill checks, except some very specific ones which had very, very high values. But for the most part, never had any issues in terms of skill checks with this party, without even worrying too much about that. Okay, so let's go over each of them one by one, and I'll start by following this order right here with my friend Barik. So Barik joins your party as a fighter type of character. He is part of the Disfavored Legion, he is a warrior for that army, and more specifically, he is one of the frontliners, he is one of the shield soldiers of that army. So he is a resilient, tanky character, a defensive character by nature. And if you look at his talents, because even though you can do whatever you want in terms of attributes and skills and whatnot, when it comes down to talents, the characters are already kind of suited for a specific game style or a specific play style. That's because of their personality, their backstory, how they integrate with the world and the lore of the world. So it makes sense that they are more focused on a specific playstyle than just being a generic whatever you want character. And Barik is a Punisher and or a Sentinel. So this means you can focus this character more on melee combat, and you can also focus him on defensive melee combat via the use of shields. Okay, so this would be the more offensive side of things, and then this would be the more defensive side of things. So this will give you more stuff like increasing damage with your one-handed weapons and two-handed weapons. You're gonna have a bunch of these talents over here. More damage if you are engaged, stuff like that. And on Sentinel you have something like a taunt spell, you can have more engagements, you can have your shield give you more buffs. So it's pretty easy to see when you look at this where you have more offense and where you have more defense. So for my particular build of Barik, and keep in mind, I never respect my characters. I could have respect them, I could have made them more efficient, I just never felt it was necessary. So this is something that I was, picking as I was going through the game and learning the game. But I think it works out quite well. And what I like about this split here is that I think it's very important. I would even go so far as to say it's crucial if you want to use Barik as a defensive character, as a tank. You want to get Clash of Iron, and you want to get Seasoned Veteran 1 and Seasoned Veteran 2. What Seasoned Veteran does is it increases the number of enemies that Barik can engage. And engagement is a mechanic in the game that I'm not going to go too deep into, but it means if an enemy goes into your area, your threatened area, they will be locked in that area. If they want to leave that area, they will have to take a disengagement attack, similar to what you have as an opportunity attack in other games or other CRPGs. So by having more number of enemies engaged, Barik can lock in place more people, or at least discourage them from leaving his area of threatening. Now, I think in theory, this is very important, and I still think this is important because it also plays around with some other stuff that I ended up using. But I did find that at least on this difficulty, which is the highest difficulty of Path of the Damned, at least in the early game, the enemies are not dumb. The enemies will look at Barik, they will see a very armored character, and a lot of the time they will try to ignore him and just go for their backline. I remember suffering with this in the early stages of the game, but not so much after a certain point. And I'll explain what point that is in a bit and why it affected some of my decisions here. I also like having the stance Phalanx. It will just give you a passive bonus to your armor, which he wants as much armor as possible, obviously. And then you also have Shield Wall, which just gives you a 40% bonus to your shield effectiveness. I'm always using Barik with the shield, so making his shield better is a good thing, of course. If we look at some of the other stuff we have here, after using Clash of Iron, you attack twice with your basic attacks for 20 seconds. It's not really what I wanted for him. I wanted him to be more defensive. You gain a large boost to movement speed for a short time at the start of combat, which means you can grab enemies more quickly, or you can go and help your party members more quickly. But again, it's not that necessary. And then we have just, a bunch of other talents here, which can be useful. Like you can leap to aid of an ally, and I'm specifically not going into too many details here just to not make this video go on too long. But you have a lot of things here which are, you take less damage and your party takes less damage, so all three of these do that. Mobility to grab enemies or help your allies. Mobility to help your to grab your enemies and help your allies again. Take some damage that an ally might be taking, which would again help your allies. If he reaches a critical level of HP, he will be healed instantly. So all of this is about becoming more defensive and being able to grab the attention of your enemies better and helping your allies more as well. Okay, so all of this does that, and it does that well. So I mentioned I used him as a tank, but you'll notice that I have most points over here rather than over here, okay? And the reason for that is I found that once I got to a certain point in the game, and I think that point was around the end of Act 1, you start getting some very nice spells. And one that changes the game for you is Mirror Image. Mirror Image will make you be a lot better defended. Okay, a lot better defended. And Mirror Image just by itself is going to make Barik survive a whole lot more than pretty much any talent that he might have over here. So at that point, I was feeling like he wasn't really being in danger anymore in a lot of fights. So I didn't see much point to just keep going down this route, because a lot of the things over here are kind of minimal increments, like 5% less damage taken. It's not bad, 10%, 15%, but it's 3 talents for this, right? And I thought at the point that I had enough armor, I had enough evasion, I didn't need more of this defensive part. And the other argument for this would be having mobility to grab the attention of enemies and keep them taunted and stuff like that, or leaping to the help of an ally. I think all of those things are cool concepts, but there is one thing that kind of overrides most of that. And that thing is this right here, Iron Tolling. This is a combo ability which, to be honest with you guys right now, I don't remember when I got this. I still think it was early in the game, but I don't really remember when I got it. But what this does is, it will taunt everybody in the area, okay? It lasts for 30 seconds, and it pulses every 3 seconds, so it pulses 10 times. So anybody, any enemy in the area of, I think, 4 meters is going to be taunted to Barik. So at that point, as long as you start the fight in a position favorable to you, which typically would mean Barik in the front, the rest of the people in the back, he will run to the enemies will start running by him or to him, you turn on Iron Tolling, he grabs everybody in the area, and then nobody will leave him anymore. Because if they're taunted, if they are smart or if they're dumb, doesn't matter. They will not go for their backline. They're taunted, which means they're on Barik and nobody else. So once I got Iron Tolling, and once I got stuff like Mirror Image, Gift of the Golem, just some really nice defensive spells, I did not feel like Barik was in danger anymore in terms of tanking and doing a good job at tanking. What I was concerned about was that during that initial part of the game where people were kind of just avoiding him and going for my backline, I thought, okay, so if they want to just run away from Barik and go for my backline, I am gonna make them pay for it. If they want to take a disengagement attack, let that attack hurt. So with that, I started putting some more points into getting more damage out of him. Especially because, once again, if you have Iron Tolling, you no longer really need to worry about defenses anymore, because you're solid with your spells, you keep them taunted, so might as well just hurt them as well. So more damage from Art of the Blade is a good thing to have. Engagement attack, you have 3 tiers of this, which are very cool. This just makes it so that when a foe gets engaged, they already take... there's a chance Barik will attack them for free, which is really cool, because he attacks rather slowly, so just giving them an attack right at the start is a nice way to dish out some damage from Barik, so I do like this. It also plays well with Iron Tolling, it plays well with Seasoned Veteran as well, so I do like this quite a lot. Having Fierce Demeanor makes a lot of sense. You pulse. Every time you pulse, enemies take -1 resolve for 3 seconds. It's not a massive debuff, but it's essentially free, and it's passive, so it's very good to have. Training Ground, just make everybody gain more experience in these particular skills, including himself. So I do want one-handed weapons for him and athletics for him in Verse. I also took Glory to the Bold, so 10% more damage for each enemy engaged, just more damage, again, favoring him getting engaged by multiple people, which is what Iron Tolling does. Last Stand, in the case that he does go down, or he is about to go down, you have 8 seconds to bring him up. So he doesn't actually go down, you can just heal him by using spells or by using potions. Basically, it guarantees that if you get crit by something very, very high damaging, as I did get by like two-handed weapon wielders, they can do a lot of damage out of nowhere. This basically guarantees you do not die to those damage spikes, which is quite nice. And finally, Blade's Embrace, just... this is active. Oh my god, I never actually used this. I thought it was passive. But yeah, it's an active ability where you deal 50% more damage per enemy engaged, which is massive. But I never used it, I thought it was a passive ability. Oh my god. But yeah, so I do think this is a nice lineup for him. For the reasons I mentioned, right? If the game didn't have Iron Tolling, which you can use per encounter, very important that part. Since you can use it every encounter, I don't think you need a lot of what's over here. Especially if you have some nice spellcasters to buff him up with some nice defenses. He's good to go with this, and then just focus on damage. I think the most important spells for Barik are going to be Mirror image if you just want evasion. So if you're fighting like very high damage dealers but they don't attack very frequently, more evasion is going to be awesome. Especially if you have the accent, which also means you take less damage from criticals. Very, very important. If you are fighting a lot of enemies that just attack very rapidly but for low damage, I would say Gift of the Golem is more important because it gives you more armor. The talent Energy Shield from the main character magic ability, magic tree, is also going to be very good because it gives your target more armor. On the first tier, it's only versus this. Second tier, it also gives it to physical damage, which is awesome. So very, very important also for Barik. And this stacks with Mirror Image, for example. So Mirror Image, Energy Shield, Gift of the Golem, and then something that even Barik himself can cast is Spectral Blur, which works amazingly with Mirror Image. And you can also give him something like Restoring Touch, so he can heal himself. And if you have access to Terratus magic, you can also give him Vampiric Weapon. That way he also heals up a little bit when he attacks somebody. This makes him very resilient, very powerful, and Iron Tolling just makes him the best tank you could hope for in the entire game. Moving up to Verse. Verse, I think, is a lot simpler to explain. She is a pure damage dealer. She is very similar to what you would think of as a rogue. I have her equipping 2 weapons and also a bow on the side weapon. That's because she starts the game... she comes to your party with 1 point, I believe, in Skirmisher. I could be wrong, but this is actually a useful ability to have, which launches an arrow that sets people on fire. And setting people on fire is very powerful because they're like kind of disabled for a little bit. So I do like having access to that. And if you expect to take AoE damage near Barik, just having her equipping a bow and shooting from afar, keeping her safe, is still a useful way to actually use Verse.
Hey, what did I tell you?
Regardless. Oh, by the way, in terms of weapons, sorry. For Barik, I just used his base armor for the entire game, basically. I had a Cleansing Charm, keeping him immune to poison since, you know, he's in the front line, he could get poisoned more often, just make him immune to that. And then he also had parrying, more parry, very important in melee. And for the weapons I'm using Penumbra, which you get from the Bastard's Wound DLC, but really this could be any weapon that's decent in the offense, and I'm mostly using this because of this defending property right here. You get plus 10 parry for each engaging enemy, which is quite cool. The Arcane Burst I used like once or twice, doesn't matter too much, but it is nice to have. Oh, sorry, this is a passive. This actually dealt some damage, really. This is a cool effect, actually. On a crit, you deal AoE damage. So yeah, a good weapon. And then for the shield, I'm using Fateful Promise. Whatever shield you want. As long as it has a nice parry rating, a nice dodge rating, and, you know, some good endurance. Just the best shield you can find is what you want on him. It's not complicated. I have a two-handed weapon on my other weapon slot. I never ended up using it. But if you find yourself in a position where you just want to do more damage and you aren't in danger of dying, just swap to a nice two-handed weapon and attack with that. So on Verse, the weapons are important, and basically, this is kind of silly to say, but you want the best weapons you can find. Okay, it's kind of a no-brainer, but that's what you want. The weapons I have over here, you're only going to get them at the end of the game. These are the Voices of Narath's weapons. Gentle Touch and Final Scream. I think they work very, very well on her. They're high damage. They have Slash, Pierce, and Crush damage, so you can attack all types of armor, which is very cool. They have a decent accuracy buff. And they have some cool effects as well. Now, for the most part, during the course of the game, I would say she joins the party and it seems like you want to use daggers on her. At least that's what it felt to me. It felt like I wanted to use daggers on her. I forgot to give her this. God damn it. Oh well. It feels like you want really fast-hitting weapons to just stab, stab, stab. But at least in the higher difficulties, I'm not sure how it plays out in normal. Enemies have very decent amount of armor. So what I would say is probably the best option for Verse is anything that, well, it's either targeting crush armor, so crushing weapons like, maces, which are high damage and target not usually defended type of armor. Or if you have other weapons, which I'm sure I have some somewhere, like this one right here, weapons that have armor penetration. I think armor penetration for Verse is the most important stat you can look for in a weapon or even in a buff you might want to give her. So weapons with armor pen and buffs such as, for example, polish arms, which give the character more armor pen, are going to be very powerful for her. In terms of armor, just the best light armor you can get. Because in terms of light armor, it does play into some things she has over here in the talents. And her talents are split into if you want to dual wield or if you want to shoot a bow. Duelist and skirmisher, right? So, not a lot to say really. This is all just dealing more damage and having useful abilities that can disable enemies. Like, for example, Gravedigger. It can knock somebody prone. Pig on a Spit. You kind of swap position with an enemy, which might come into play in a certain situation. Like, if they are outside of an AoE of your spellcasters, you can maybe bring them into the AoE. But for the most part, it's very minimal. It's just a more damage type ability. Killing Spree, attack more often when you kill somebody, very cool as well. And also Fury's Embrace for some rapid flurry of blows, which can also deal a lot of damage and leave lingering dots on the enemy. For the Skirmisher, you have Burning Iron, which is again just, a good range attack, which disables. Eternal Flame makes the Burning Iron even better. But then, the best part about the Skirmisher, especially if you don't really care too much about the archery aspect of things, because I was mostly focusing on dual wielding, is going to be improvised attacks, which increases accuracy, and you want a lot of accuracy on higher difficulties to make sure you hit, and also that you crit, because the more accuracy you have, the more you crit with your characters. It also removes a recovery penalty from switching weapons. If I want to swap from the bow to a weapon, melee weapons, I can do so rapidly, which is also useful. But it's mostly for the accuracy. Battle Mind, just get more skill gained in athletics, bows, and dual wield. All good things for her, and some also for Barik. And finally, Sense Weakness, you gain 15% more damage against targets affected by a damage over type effect. And if there's one thing I'm doing in every single fight is applying as many dots and disables as I can to every single enemy. Especially with my spellcasters, but even she can do that by using her Burning Iron or Eternal Flame, or even applying poison to her weapons, which she can do as well. In terms of defense, she also has something very cool that can also make her a very good tank. She has the Nimble tree over here. So Nimble means, while only wearing light armor, she gains a bonus to dodge, which is not a lot, but it is decent. Then you have Nimble 2, which gives you a plus 30, which is significant for your defenses. And then you also have Evasive. So you get plus 25 defense when disengaging, not very important. But then you can use dodge instead of parry for melee attacks. So combine Evasive with Nimble and using light armor, you can basically just ignore parry altogether and just focus on leveling dodge, and Verse can be a very decent tank for you as well. Now, I went for this split. I think it worked out quite well for me. I could have gotten some more things over here, like for example getting more damage while dual wielding. I have plus 15%, I could have gone up to plus 30%. Obviously it would have been nice. This is while using Fury's Rush, which is a once per rest ability. That's why I don't like it that much, and thus that's why I'm not using this. And finally we had Sweeping Death. It's a cooldown ability which deals damage to everybody around her. It's cool, but I didn't feel like I needed this. I just wanted more single target damage from her, because in terms of AoE, I have my AoE right here, in terms of spellcasters. So this is a really nice split between having some powerful abilities in the form of... Wait, what is this? Ah, right. I forgot about this. When you get attacked, you also gain a passive bonus to your dodge and parry until combat ends, and this stacks. Again, just to make it even a better tank. But yeah, this is single target damage with some utility and disables. And on the side of the skirmisher over here is, again, more passive damage, more accuracy, more defenses, and also some disables in the form of the Eternal Flame and Burning Iron. She was a very important character, especially late in the game, when you start facing off against single powerful enemies, because you do need consistent DPS on those, which is something that spellcasters don't really have all that much, right? They're more of a burst type of character, while Verse can just keep on dishing out damage. But throughout the entire game, she was always useful. Next up, let's actually talk about Lantry, because let's cover the companions first. So Lantry joins the party as someone that is going to be a support character, right? He comes with Control Life and Control Vigor as his main things. He comes in, I think he comes in with this. But he has a spellcasting talent tree, a preservation talent tree, which is again spellcasting but more focused on healing and defenses. And then he also has his quill, which is basically his throwing dagger. Now, I used Lantry solely as a spellcaster. I basically ignored this altogether. Like I said, I could have respected them to take this away from here and put it somewhere else. I didn't feel like I needed to. In fact, for Lantry, since we got to such a high level on him, level 24, I got to a point where I was putting points in places I no longer needed, basically. But yeah, Lantry, the way you want to play him is very traditional for a spellcaster. You want to have light armor or you want to have robes because you want to have your recovery low. What I found was that using a robe or using light armor was not that different in terms of recovery. Sure, you have better recovery on a robe, but with light armor is not bad either. And light armor does give you a lot better defenses than robes would ever give you. And Lantry was getting focused quite hard in the early game. Enemies love to focus your spellcasters. But yeah, for him, basically what you want is decent light armor with some nice defenses, and then if you can find something that will give you some kind of little bonus like Herbalist Mitts, which give you like 10 control life, go for it. It's gonna help you out a little bit. Oh, I forgot on Verse. In terms of accessories, on Verse I'm using Lucky, which gives her critical deflection and hit precision. Just very, very good. More crits and less crits taken. And I'm also giving her the Rust Charm, which has Entropic. 1 armor penetrated by attacks when inflicted crits. So every crit you do, you penetrate more armor. Like I said, she wants as much armor pen as possible, so that helps out a lot. Accessories for Lantry. I gave him Silent Archive, which gives him Wits, Resolve, and Trap Protection. He can use all these things, especially these two over here. And I also gave him the Chronicler's Eye, which is specific for him, gives him plus 10 lore, and you want as much lore as possible on your spellcasters. You can never get enough lore. And also Wise, which is just will defense, but it's mostly for the lore. Now, like I said, he plays as a support character and as a backline damage dealer. That's his role. It's a very simple role to understand. The one thing I want to mention in terms of building your spellcasters and equipping your spellcasters is do not feel obligated to using a staff. You don't need to use a staff. You can use a shield. And especially earlier in the game, where maybe your frontline or Barik isn't all that good at keeping aggro or taunting the enemies or whatever, just having a shield to keep you better defended is going to be much more useful than having a staff that can, you can pew pew with it a couple times. I would find the shield to be better. Later in the game though, when you are better defended and when Barik can hold aggro from the entire world, then you can swap for a staff if the staff has something that's going to be useful for you. In my case, I have one that's an artifact, which gives me a nice buff or a nice ability, and I also have a very nice passive ability, which is very, very defensive. Very, very good. So, in terms of building him, like I said, I ignored the Quill, I didn't attack with him at all. I went initially for Sage, and it's very easy to learn why. Watcher's Judgment and Arcane Judgment are not that important, although you can apply... What is it? You can apply Spell Breached, which will make enemies more susceptible to magic attacks, which can be useful, but it's melee. You have to go into melee to do this, which I don't like too much. But then we have Lore Master 1, 2, and 3. It's a no-brainer. More lore, better. Take it every single time. Voice of Ages allows Lantry to decipher certain things as you go through the game. It's also very cool to learn new sigils. I like it a lot. Always take this. And you also get plus 10% hit precision, which can turn hits into crits. Very powerful as well. I took Mage Slayer. When you hit somebody with the weapon, they get silenced, which seemed cool if I was using this, but I never really used it. But you do need a certain number of points to go down the tree, so I think that's why I did it. Whatever. Learned Instructor, you get one more party spell slots. More spell slots is amazing. More lore experience gained, amazing. So all these things are priceless. Ancient Knowledge, more spell slots, again, no-brainer. And then finally, Recounting of Deeds. I basically never use this, but this is a good effect, right? It's a 1 minute cooldown. It gives everybody in the party 44% magic defense, endurance defense, and will defense, which is a very decent buff. And it will also terrify enemies in the area for a couple of seconds. Now, problems with this. For this to work, you need to be close to the enemies, which might not always be obvious. Although it can be useful if somebody jumps on Lantry and you want him to, to peel the guy away from him, you can just cast this and maybe he will run away terrified. But the problem is, if people are being taunted by Barik, let's say, or just engaged by Barik, and you want them to stay in place, because you want to AoE them down typically, if you terrify them, they will start running all over the place. And that doesn't help for your damage potential, especially with spellcasters. Still, it's cool, I just didn't use it all that much. Now, on Preservation, this is where I think you also have a lot of cool things. Renewal and the empowered part of it, which is Greater Renewal, it gives you more armor for Piece of Armor Warned. It will also give you armor penetration. Just all good things. AoE lasts a long time, so just very, very powerful. Control Life and Control Vigor, I took these just to fill up slots to move down and just because I had nothing else to pick. Erase the Record is cool. You protect somebody. If that somebody goes low on HP, he's instantly healed. In theory, it's cool. I used this like once, I think. Reviving a Fallen Comrade, that's very powerful. Thankfully, it was never necessary, but if needed, like if Barik goes down and you need your tank to come back up, you can do it with this. And the empowered version, you will also heal him as you bring him back up, and you will be immune to damage for 6 seconds as well. So, really good. You give him time to stand up, you can heal him, he can drink potions. Very, very good. Passage of Hours. Again, I never use this, but you can slow an enemy for a couple of seconds, which is quite good. It's not super powerful, but it's good. And then Gift of Moments. This one is kind of iffy. You heal yourself for 10% of your HP every 3 seconds for 12 seconds. So you heal quite a lot. You become invisible and untargetable for 12 seconds as well. And on use, after 12 seconds, you can give an allies in AoE a 100% recovery time bonus for 12 seconds. Now, I used this once, and the problem with this is, it doesn't say here, but not only are you invisible and untargetable, but you also can't do anything during that time. So, if Lantry is about to die, and you have to protect him and heal him, this is useful, but just keep in mind that for 12 seconds he's out of the fight. So if you need his spells, you won't have them. What else? That's basically it. Now, let's go into... I'll actually talk about the spells at the end. Let's go for my main character now. So my main character is going to be very similar in terms of build idea to what you have in Lantry. They're essentially the same thing, right? They're support characters that they want to stand in the back line, and they want to shoot spells from afar and buff your allies as well. So what do I use on him? Same as Lantry. The best light armor I can use. If it has some kind of buff, awesome. If it doesn't, whatever. I have Goring, for example, over here on this guy, which is useful. But just overall, the best light armor you can get. I gave him the fragment of Cairn's head for 2 additional wits. Wits is the best thing you can get for your spellcasters. I'll talk about the stats at the end for each one. I kind of forgot about that. Steadfast Insignia gives me 3 resolve. It also allows to give more resolve to people around you if you use the ability. I didn't use it all that often, but 3 resolve by itself is quite good. For the majority of the game, I was using a shield with whatever, because I didn't go into battle. And finally, once I got some better stuffs, I used the Unraveler's Cane. So this gives you a bonus to atrophy, and it also gives you a bonus to critical damage multiplier. And we do a lot of damage, so this was quite good for me, especially once I felt safe enough to not use a shield anymore. In terms of my build here, though, this is where it's kind of interesting for the main character. For my personal taste and for my party, I found the best things to be in leadership. So the most important thing you can do with your main character, in my opinion, especially if you're playing more of a backline type of character, is you want leadership. But I'll actually start with magic, because this was his initial talent tree, and it's more of what he was initially designed to be, which is just a nuker, a spell slinger, or a spell chucker. We get Magical Prodigy, more lore, you always want this. Arcane Charge, you get 15 to all magic skill for 20 seconds after using that charge. It's not very interesting, but I mean, it's a point so you can move down the line. Expanded Mine, spell slots, you always want this. Energy Shield, especially the improved version Wardmaster. This is amazing, especially when you get it early and you are able to give this to Barik, especially this enhanced version here. This is kind of a game changer in terms of him tanking. It's very, very powerful. This is only here because I had nowhere else to put points in. You can just ignore this. I never attack with the staff. Same thing with Spell Reflection. I didn't care about this at all. I put this typically on Barik. He doesn't really need Spell Deflection, but it kind of helps out a little bit in case you want it. But it's not necessary. Expanded Mind 2. 4 available spell slots more. Very good. Chaos Blast. Again, you don't need this. Same thing with Imbue the Elements. Unless you are attacking with a weapon, you don't need this for your spellcaster. Same thing with Empowered Chaos, it doesn't really matter all that much. I used this once and never used it again. So, for magic, what you want is this part right here. Or sorry, this part right here. You don't need this here, you just want this here, this line. Then, on range, I don't care about this. I just put a point here so I could reach safe distance. It will give me more accuracy against distant enemies, and we are always fighting from a distance. And again, Path of the Damned, accuracy is very critical. This means you hit more often, you crit more often, very, very important. And then I also took Evasive at some point, where you can use dodge instead of parry for melee attacks. You mostly level up dodge because you're taking arrows from enemies from afar. You are not really in melee if you are playing safely. So being able to ignore parry and just go for dodge is a cool thing to have. Not super important, but nice to have. And I also like Lightfoot, where you move faster in combat. You can just reposition better, you can run away, you can do a lot of things with this. It's just useful for a single point. And then the really cool stuff is in leadership. Bandolier. The party gains 2 additional quick item slots and consumables while used while in combat. What? Sorry. And consumables used while in combat are more effective. This might feel kind of whatever because it's potions and whatnot, but trust me, this is stupid good. This will turn even the basic healing potions into almost like healing half your HP or even more. It is very, very good. It's very good to have. Also, among all three of these, I do think this is the better one. And you need to put 1 point here to go down. Refuse Pain. In an AoE, you can remove a random hostile effect every 3 seconds for 12 seconds. This can be very useful in certain fights. Especially with Bane is where I used it the most. Because the Malice Bane will apply Spell Breach and negative armor on Arcane. And that meant that Barik, for example, would go from taking 1 and 2 points of damage from a Scourge to taking 15 and 20. It's a massive difference. So being able to remove those harmful effects is a very powerful thing to have available to you. Similarly, we also have Will of Command. It gives a buff of 15% damage to everybody around the main character. I use this very rarely. It's not very important. Additional spell slots everybody in the party. Again, no-brainer, especially for spellcasters. Boost morale. While in combat, your party members that fight near you gain a bonus which are their attributes. Again, this is a little bit wasted on a ranged character because I am far away from the people I really want this to be on, which would be Barik and Verse. I can still buff Lantry, but my spellcasters kind of move around a little bit to line up their spells, so it's not going to be very useful all that often. Resurgence. We can revive an ally and heal them in the process. Very important, especially since you don't have to waste a spell slot on this. Killing Rush. I took this just to get to this last tier here. Every time you kill an enemy, you get 5% HP on everybody in the party. It helps a little bit, but it's not very important. I wouldn't take this until very late in the game just because. Call to Battle and Victory... sorry? What is this? No, Call to Battle. You can buff an ally, not yourself, with Vitality, Wits, and Might for 60 seconds. It's a +3. Now, this is really good, but the one I'm thinking about is this one. Yeah. So, this is the important part about these spells, okay? If you just look at the description, which sometimes we're kind of tempted to do, because why read the generalistic description if I can actually look at the stats? This might not feel very impressive, okay? It's just +3. It's already good, but it's not that good. The good part about this spell is right here. Based on their loyalty. So that +3, I'll take Verse as an example. Verse has currently 21 might. And she is completely loyal to me. So 21 might would bring her up to 24, right? She goes up to 29. She gets a bonus of 8 might from that one buff, which doesn't take up a spell slot. It's almost instant to apply, and it lasts for as long as the cooldown is. So you can keep this up 100% of the time. It's a massive buff. It is super good. And not only here, right? Her vitality isn't 20, but now it is. So she got a +8 to this as well. And also a +8 to wits. This part is kind of whatever on her, but still. And then, similarly, we also have the other one, which is Apply the Lash. So it does the same thing, but for the other 3 stats. And again, the better part of this is right here. Increases based on their fear. So if you have somebody that's very loyal to you, but also afraid of you, and I'll give the example of Verse once again, right? It's also gonna give them a very good buff and not even take up a spell slot. It is very, very powerful. And finally, I went for Undying. Undying is very good. The main downside of this is that it takes 10 minutes of a cooldown, so you can't really use it. I mean, you can use it in every fight if you just wait a little bit, but it takes some time to wait for the cooldown. And what this does is, in a large area, and you can point it, you can throw it at an area, you don't have to be the center of it, you will give every ally 10% health every 3 seconds for 30 seconds. Very good. This is very good. And also 50% more damage for 30 seconds. This is a massive boost. It's a massive boost. I didn't use this very much because I only got it at the end of the game, or close to the end of the game, but it does make a difference. It is very good to have. Okay, so before we get into the spells, let me actually go over something here which I forgot, which is the stats for everybody, or the attributes. Now, what you're gonna see here, if anything is marked in green, that means it's getting a buff from something, okay? So the real values are the ones in white, or in this case, it would be 16 minus that plus 2 of toughened, it would be 14. But for Barik, you might think that what you really want is vitality, but in my opinion, it's really not, okay? Getting more HP on a tank is a good thing, but it's nowhere near as good as having more armor or having more evasion. And those things you can get through spells, okay? So you don't need those things. And at the same time, you also have armor deflection right here, this value, which means it can bring a crit to a hit, or a hit to a graze, or a graze to a miss. So the more deflection you have in this type of armor is going to be better for you. So this stat right here, coupled with something like mirror image, and coupled with something like, I forget the name, spectral blur, is what's going to make Barik very tanky. If you just have more HP, sure, you have a little bit more of a buffer, you can take a little bit more damage, and you also heal for a little bit more, because heals are percentage based, not flat amounts, but you're still gonna get hit. And if you're getting hit, you're gonna die eventually. So it's much better to focus on something else. So I prioritized getting more armor deflection, and also, very important here, more accuracy, because again, especially on higher difficulties, you need more accuracy. If you don't have accuracy, you're gonna miss everything. And not just miss his attack, he's gonna miss his disabling skills, he's going to miss his taunt ability, he's gonna miss a bunch of things that you don't want to miss. So, since I found that the best way to defend Barik is via spells, or maybe a better shield or better armor, by improving his armor on the forge, vitality becomes kind of irrelevant. I didn't give him a single point in vitality, I don't think, unless maybe 1 point to round it up, but that's basically it. So I focused on getting finesse to 19, and after finesse, I went for might. Again, on the whole topic of, if somebody wants to ignore Barik and take a disengagement attack as a consequence, I want them to pay for it. So I want them to hit, and I want them to hurt. And also, once you get to a point where you feel like you are hitting consistently, then just getting more might is gonna make Barik dish out some decent damage. Even if he's just using a single weapon and using a shield, he can still do a lot of damage. On Verse, I focused initially on accuracy, on finesse, because once again, I just want more accuracy on her, make sure she hits. And once I got accuracy to a decent enough state where I felt like she was hitting, in this case was 19, because I also wanted to crit very often for a couple of other reasons as well, I just focused everything on might. So I basically went quickness and then might. On my main character, my spellcasters leveled up a lot more than these two, keep that in mind. But on my main character, I went to 19 wits, which is the max amount you can get before you start having to waste 2 points to level it up once. I never did that, I just went for single increments. So I went for wits to 19, then I went for finesse to 19 as well. After getting wits and finesse to 19, I went into quickness as well. I might have put some points here and there during the early and mid game, but I think overall this is what matters the most. So wits, finesse, quickness. So we want more powerful spells, we want our spells to hit, and we also want to have less spell cooldown, very important. And then after getting this, I went into more resolve, because resolve is going to increase the duration of your afflictions. So if you have something disabling or debuffing an enemy, this will make it last longer. So those are the things I focused the most on him. And for Lantry, very similar. Max wits, max finesse, max quickness, and then trying to max resolve. That's essentially it. Never put a point in mind, he doesn't need it. Never put a point in vitality because he's standing in the back, he doesn't really need the extra HP here. With that, let's now go into the spells. Now, I am going to talk about the spells I have here and maybe do like a couple of honorable mentions. I am not going to go over every single spell. Okay, there's like a ton of combinations. It's not, it would be a 10-hour video. I thought this video was going to be short. It's already 1 hour long. But yeah, so I'm going to start by talking about the non-spellcasters. So Barik and Verse. Don't forget, you can teach Verse and Barik lore on a trainer. You can do that, and you can increase their lore by casting spells. There's nothing bad about that. There's actually only upside to that. It means you also level up faster. So I gave them a couple of spells, but the most important ones are going to be Restoring Touch, which we did use throughout, especially the early and mid game. Sometimes you start taking some damage, but your potion is on cooldown, or Lantry is on cooldown as well on his healing spells, and you need that extra little bit of healing. This can help out quite a bit, and it's kind of free because they don't really need their spell slots for anything else. Spectral Blur is probably the most important one you can have for your frontline. It's going to give them graze deflection and hit deflection, turning crits into hits and turning hits into grazes and grazes into misses. So it's a very cool defensive spell. I have these two on both characters for the same reason, and everything else I never actually ended up using. I did get Vampiric Weapon very late in the game. Every time he attacks somebody, he can get some HP back. Sure, but it's a very minimal thing. You could also give this to Verse because she attacks faster, but I prefer giving her something else, which doesn't stack, by the way. So yeah, for them, you can do this, and if you want to do something else, you could maybe go for some kind of an aura spell that can apply fear, or, like for example this right here, Aura of Fear, you could put it on somebody else. But it's a very high amount of lore, and I think it's only one you can reach if you really consistently are casting spells on every single fight, and you also learn some lore on the trainers, which I prefer to use on other stuff, like for example one-handed weapons and parry, or dual wield and dodge. So I never really got enough lore to go for this type of stuff, so I just didn't give them those types of spells. All this doesn't matter. The most important ones really are Spectral Blur and Restoring Touch. Moving to our actual spellcasters. Now, this is based on my personal preference and my experience on what I felt was effective and fun to use, okay? So, the first one, which I've been using for a very long time, is Rhyme Spike. So Rhyme Spike is Frost with Distant Impact. I don't think I have to go through this, but sure. I have Rhyme Spike, which is essentially a single target nuke that also has a little bit of AoE around it, which is nice if you can clump up your enemies around Barik, for example, which I do constantly. This spell hits quite hard. If you can clump them up, it hits quite hard in AoE. And then you can even do more fun stuff as the game goes on. You can get the Sigil of Frostfire, which means that this spell not only applies Frozen, which is already quite good because it slows down the enemy considerably and also reduces their crush armor. You also apply Mage Fire, which makes them kind of flail around for a little bit, making them disabled, and it will also burn them over time. So this spell is really very, very good. And then, eventually, you can even get the sigil of Bounding Bolts, which makes this spell bounce multiple times during combat. So, it's a single target nuke with AoE around it that bounces around everybody nearby. Well, a couple of times at least. Like 2 times, I think. Or 1 time. But it's a very nice boost as well. Getting more AoE, getting more accuracy, getting more strength. All these things are quite good. But the main defining ones are going to be the Sigil of Frostfire and the Sigil of Bounding Bolts. Very, very cool spell. You can do this very early. Not with this, but still very early with the basic stuff. Very powerful. Very nice to have. Lantry has the same thing. You'll notice that the very powerful spells, I have it on both of them. I also have Electric Jolt. This is essentially a disable. It's a lightning bolt, right? It does lightning damage, but the best part about it is that it stuns the target and it stuns anybody around it, just like you have the same effect, for example, with Rime Spike or Fireball. And stunning an enemy, of course, is going to be a very powerful effect. Then you can even have stuff like increase the AoE, so you can stun more people, increase duration, so they are stunned for longer, and you can also apply Bounding Bolt, so it bounces between them, stunning multiple targets even if they are kind of far away from each other. Very powerful spell, more of a utilitarian spell than a damage dealing spell, let's say. Again, I have the same thing on Lantry, except a little bit different. Instead of bouncing, it's piercing. So it's gonna still hit multiple enemies in a line. But once again, for the same reason, it's a utilitarian spell, not so much for damage. Later in the game, I found the Influential Domain Sigil, which allows you to make ground effects. I looked over all the ground effects for all of the cores, and honestly, I was not impressed with any of them. Maybe I'm not doing them justice, but still. And even this one didn't feel that powerful at the start, but I tried to use it. I tried to use it just for fun. And it is one of the best spells you can have, I think. It's one of the best spells in my arsenal by far. So this applies an area of Arctic ground. And anybody in that area, and this pulses, by the way, every 6 seconds it pulses for 21 seconds. Based on my modifiers, okay? And the recovery time of anybody in the area is going to increase, making them slower, and this stacks. You can knock them prone for a very decent amount of time in the entire area, which is a large area. And then you can apply some cool stuff on a very large AoE to the spell. Like, for example, what is it? Making every single enemy hit by it marked. And mark means everybody has more accuracy against that target. So it's an additional debuff on the enemy. So I'm using this with extra accuracy, reduced cooldown, extra AoE, longer duration, and marking. You could also put bleeding here, which would be cool. Just make them bleed the entire time. But I prefer markings to improve the entire party rather than just dealing some extra damage. This is a priceless spell. It's game-changing, really. You'll see Lantry also has it. Then I also have Flesh to Stone. Very basic spell. It's a single target spell. If it lands, it's going to petrify the enemy. Now, of course, if you petrify somebody, that somebody is probably dead because he's paralyzed, he cannot act, he cannot defend himself. You can just kill him without him doing anything. And it lasts for 18 seconds. And you can also apply marking, bleeding, whatever you want to do. In my case, I'm using extra accuracy, reduced cooldown, extra range, longer duration, and marking. I could put interrupt, but I never did. So this one is more niche. Since it's single target, you don't always need this, so I only have it on my main character here. But when you do need it, and if the enemy is not immune to it, it can make a difficult opponent just free. Mirror Image. One of the most powerful spells in the game, in my opinion. What this does is, it's going to give your... let me rephrase. It's going to give a single target a very nice buff to parry and dodge. Okay? It's very good by itself. If you put it, for example, on yourself to keep you safe, or on Lantry, or even just on Barik if you want to, but it really becomes a whole lot better once you can also apply Sigil of Limitless Boundaries, making this AoE. So you can apply this effect to your entire party, and that is a massive boost of parry and dodge. It's a, like I said, it's a game changer. Without this, especially in the early game, you're getting hit and crit left and right, dying almost instantly, and this makes it the world of difference, really. It's a big difference. The way I like to use this is making it AoE, of course. I like to make it as powerful as possible, just making this be, you know, as much of a buff as possible. Reducing the cooldown, it doesn't matter too much, I just put it here because, basically. Making it last longer, also useful. I could have even made it better because I have enough lore for it right now. And then also very importantly, you have Sigil of Deflecting, which means it reduces the critical hit damage taken for a long period of time. So if you do get crit by being very unlucky, because it went by parry or dodge, it went by your deflection, it went by everything, and the enemy rolled a 100, you take 75% less damage, which means something that could one-shot you is probably not going to do that much damage to you. So this is a massive, massive buff spell. Amazing. I would use it in every single fight. If you want to change this up, instead of using the deflecting sigil for the crit damage reduction, you could use pride magic, selfless magic. If you want to benefit your party but not yourself, you can use selfless magic, which is going to make it much more powerful. It goes from 185 to 278, but it cannot buff yourself. Or if you just want to buff yourself, you have Sigil of Pride, which, again, the same massive boost, but it only affects you. Personally, I prefer affecting everybody and also having the crit reduction. This is the way I build it. It's only on my main character because this lasts for a long time. I can just reapply it if I need to, and typically a fight doesn't even last this long. After that, I have Withering Claw. This is a line effect. It's kind of a very short... it's not broad. It's the opposite. I'm missing the word here. Very... Whatever. It's not broad. It's a very tiny line. It's long, but it's very tiny. But it's also a very powerful effect, because what this does, and I'm coupling this with marking as well, is it weakens the enemies, making their might go down by a considerable amount. It marks them because of my extra buff here, but the really cool part here is it silences the enemies. So if you have spellcasters in the enemy party, you cast this, they're silenced, they're basically useless. They actually deal some damage with their stupid magic staffs, but for the most part they cannot cast spells, making them much less of a threat. So very cool spell. I've used this very much ever since I got it. I'm using it with extra accuracy, extra range, lower cooldown, extra duration, and also marking over here. Again, I want this like once. I don't need Lantry to have it as well, so I only have it on my main character here. Then I also took Wave of Despair. I don't use this very much. I would say it's the least important spell of my entire spellbook here. But it can still be useful for a specific reason here. It's my own, it's one of my 2 cone spells, but this one is cool because the cone is actually somewhat long range. And what this does is it makes enemies move much slower, it fatigues and dazes them a lot, so making them just slower still and lowering their quickness. And I'm also coupling this with bleeding. So I'm slowing everybody in the area, I'm making them fatigued and dazed, and I'm also applying bleed to everybody. Plus, I am coupling this with Staggering Force, which interrupts. Which means anybody hit by this is gonna get a massive interrupt to whatever they're doing, delaying their actions by a lot. And this can be very powerful, because if they're very slowed up, if they have a lot of recovery penalties and quickness reductions and whatnot, by giving them a nice interrupt, it will delay them by a long amount of time. It can be very powerful, but it's not as important as everything else over here. So I use this with extra power, extra accuracy, extra range, less cooldown, more duration, interrupt, and bleed. I only want one of these effects, so I'm not using it on Lantry either. Next up, a very important one, polish weapons. This will give a target armor penetration for a long time, okay? And if you couple it, which I do always, and I love this, if you couple it with volcanic weapon, that means if that somebody crits, a cone of fire, a long range cone of fire, shoots out of your caster, hitting everything in front of him. So I love putting this on Verse. That's also why I don't give Verse vampiric weapon, because these do not stack. What Verse needs is armor pen. This gives her that. She attacks quickly because she's dual wielding, which works really well with the crit bursting the fires. And she also has a lot of accuracy, which means more crits. It just works perfectly with Verse, and I love using this on Verse. I always have it on Verse. Very, very big damage boost just by having this on. Next up, I have Icicle Storm. I think really this could kind of be anything, honestly. It's a cool spell to use. I wouldn't say it's that powerful. It's somewhat powerful in the mid game. In the late game, not so much. The reason why I like it is that you can affect a large area with the cone effect, and with Frostfire Sigil, you can apply Frozen and Mage Fire to everybody. So it's obviously going to be a really cool debuff to apply, and I also gave it some interrupt to interrupt everybody in the area, just making it even more powerful. So again, I'm giving it more power, more accuracy, range, cooldown reduction, more AoE, interrupt, and Frostfire. Very cool spell because it's a debuff and damage all in one. Quick cooldown. It's cool to use. I like it. Next up, I like this a lot. It's the Bouncy Frostfire Fireball. So I renamed this to Bouncy, right? It's a simple fireball, but it's using bounding bolts. So it's a fireball that bounces, applies Mage Fire, and also applies Frozen. It is very powerful. It might not deal a lot of damage. It doesn't. I don't care. It deals enough damage. It sets pretty much the entire enemy group on fire because this has an AoE and it bounces a bunch of times. So it's going to bounce on everybody, AoEing multiple times. So you're going to apply Frozen and Mage Fire to everybody from the enemy party in one spell, which is very good. You deal decent damage. It's very fun to use as well, and the cooldown is low. I like it a lot. I have it on both myself and Lantry as well. Just simple spell, but very effective. More strength, more precision, range, less cooldown, more AoE, and then bounding bolts and Frostfire. And finally, one of the spells which I love very, very much to use. Sometimes it's not that easy to line up, but it's very fun to use. It's Ball Lightning. So you shoot a slow moving ball of lightning, and the way it works is for every enemy it hits along the way, it's gonna pulse with shock damage. And that shock damage is actually a decent amount of damage. And if you have multiple enemies, it's going to burst multiple times. So it's going to stack up to very high amounts of damage very quickly. It's a very fun spell. It can do a lot of damage. So I have it on both myself and Lantry here also. I like having multiple types of damage as well, like, fire, frost, and lightning, because some enemies in the game will be vulnerable to some of these and immune to others. So it's good to have some variety here. I build this one with more power, more accuracy, more range, less cooldown, interrupt, and also killing blows. So the less HP the enemy has, the more damage you will take from this spell. Just making it like a killer spell. This is my lineup for my main character. I will say that after a certain point in the game, this is what I always used. The only exception is Arctic Ground, this spell used to be... it used to be Giant Boulder. Because you send a line, you send a boulder in a line that deals crush damage and prones people, but it prones in a line. The damage is cool, but the best part about it is the prone. So with this, just doing the same prone effect, but every 6 seconds in a massive area, while also marking everybody in the area and applying more recovery time to all they do, is just a better option, in my opinion. So I swapped for this. But overall, I never really changed my spells all that much. These are very, very powerful. They work very, very well. I can very easily recommend them to anybody who wants to play this game. If you play with these spells, you will do just fine in the game. Next up, we have Lantry. So everything that I have on my character as well as Lantry is for the same reason, right? So I have stuns, I have Frost Nuke, I have the bouncy Frostfire Fireball to apply debuffs to everybody in the area. I have Arctic Ground because it's super powerful, and also Ball Lightning. So the main differences here are, on Lantry, I also have Restoring Touch because I do want somebody not engaged in melee to also be able to heal, and Lantry can heal for quite a good amount. And Restoring Touch is just that. It's like a single target heal in which I give more power, more accuracy because you can actually crit with buffs, more range, less cooldown, it's actually a really short cooldown, and I'm also giving it Spell Surge. Every time I cast this, I get a recovery bonus. The other healing spell I use is Healing Wisps. This spell early in the game is very unimpressive. It is very unimpressive. It heals for a very short amount, it's not that good, but it does get better later on. So the way I use it is with Distant Impact, more strength, more range, less cooldown, more accuracy, but the most important part here is Sigil of Volleys, so you have increased number of projectiles fired from the spell, because each projectile heals. And then also couple this with Bounding Bolts. I'm not sure if I can show this with people fully healed.
As you command.
I can. So you can see this can actually heal your entire party or just the more injured people very, very well, because it shot like what, 4 or 5 projectiles? Each projectile healing for 7% max HP is a very decent amount of healing. So yeah, early on, very unimpressive spell. Once you get especially these two, it becomes a very good spell, very cool spell. I even sometimes healed people from near death with just this and not having to use Restorative Touch. Just very good. Sometimes you take some massive AoEs from specific enemies, everybody gets injured. This will heal everybody. Just very good spell. I would always have this on Lantry. Other than that, I'm taking Gift of the Golem. This is a different kind of buff for Barik. If I don't want Mirror Image and I just want more armor, I use this. So this gives him more armor, a move speed penalty that doesn't matter too much, and I also use Deflecting Sigil to make him safer from critical hits. So the way I build it is extra power for more armor, extra accuracy, extra range, extra duration. And then finally, Sigil of Deflecting. I also have Surge of Glory. It's a very cool spell. It's not so easy sometimes to use because the range is very short. It's gonna give everybody in the area 56% more damage for 30 seconds. That's a massive boost. And also a boost to resolve. Very, very nice. So I like to use this with more power for more damage, more accuracy, more range, less cooldown, longer duration, and then also Spell Surge to give Lantry a nice recovery bonus for almost 10 seconds here. And I think the final one is Guidance. So Guidance is very simple in what it does, but it's also very powerful. What this does is allied AoE, because I think this is an aura spell and it can affect everybody. It's gonna give the caster and everybody near them, the target and everybody near them, an 18% increase in hit precision. So 18% of hits will be turned into crits, which is very powerful. And also 37% graze precision. turning grazes into hits. This is also a massive boost for your damage. A lot more crits, a lot more hits, very nice to have. I typically put this on my main character to give him more crits and also Lantry because they're typically somewhat together. And I like using this in this fashion. I think this is all in terms of spells. I guess I can mention like my buffing routine. I do this often in my playthroughs. If you want to see it in action, you can see in my playthrough on a given fight. But what I typically do is I line people up, or I bunch them up so they're all together.
Of course.
This is so AoE spells can affect everybody.
Sorry, I can't.
And I would normally do something like Energy Shield on Barik, give him more armor. I would put Polish Arms on Verse. Mirror Image on everybody. And then, once I had these from Leadership, I would also give Apply the Lash coupled with Call to Battle on Verse to just make it a very powerful killing machine. And this would be the buffing I would do with my main character. And you can see as an example here, right now we are at 344 dodge, 271 parry, which is stupidly powerful for any kind of melee engagement. And she also has massive stats, making it very powerful and very dangerous. Everybody is well defended. Barik has some very decent armor as well as a lot of evasion, as you can see over here, making him very, very tanky. So it's a very good buffing routine from this character. And from Lantry, I like to give Greater Renewal as my first one. Then, depending if I want armor or mirror image on Barik, I could give him Gift of the Golem.
Consider it done.
Guidance on my main character over here. And finally, this is more during combat because the duration is not that long. Surge of Glory, mid-combat, buffing all of these for that extra boost in damage. And also part of the pre-buffing routine is my frontline will also always have Spectral Blur.
I'll do it for the North.
This is my pre-buffing routine, which honestly works from the moment you get the sigils necessary for it all the way up until the end of the game. So, what I thought was going to be like a 20-minute video is it's a much longer video. But yeah, regardless. So these were my party builds. Okay, I think we saw all of the items, we saw all the stats, talents, the spells, the way I use them, the party composition. Some replacement suggestions in case you wanted them to. Like I said, you could have Kills in Shadow instead of Verse. And then you could have Ebb or Siren instead of Lantry for a spellcaster main character, obviously. But yeah, that is it for my characters for this playthrough that I did in Path of the Damned. I do believe it served me quite well. The very early game, we struggled a little bit, but I think you're always going to struggle in the higher difficulty. Unless you use consumables. I think consumables were the thing I had to use more in the early game. But once you get some levels and some spells, this party with this build will take care of anything you come across. Very easily, I might add as well. That's it for this video, my friends. I hope you guys enjoyed it or it was useful. If you have any questions, something I didn't cover and you want to see or something, any suggestions as well, leave a comment below. If you are enjoying this type of content, consider subscribing for more. Many more videos coming out soon, and I hope to see you all in some other video. Until then, stay safe, everyone.